It's a humid Thursday here in Seoul. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon. Coming up on today's program. Korea's economic growth slowed in the second quarter compared to the previous 3 months as exports fell 3% on quarter, weighing on the overall economy. Not everyone is smiling as some companies post stellar profits in the second quarter while others report big losses amid an ongoing diplomatic row over the deployment of THAAD. We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. The Bank of Korea has released the country's second quarter growth figures. It has slipped back into the 0% range, but Korea could still be on track to reach 3% growth for 2017. And while the export boom appears to have lost some of its recent momentum, domestic consumption appears to be on the mend. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
Korea's domestic consumption appears to be showing signs of a solid recovery. The Bank of Korea says the country's GDP grew 0.6% on quarter in the April to June period this year, led by a significant 0.9% rise in private consumption, the highest seen in a year and a half.
The Korean economy grew 2.8% in the first half of this year. While second quarter figures pale in comparison to the January to March period, this is due to a weakening of the base effect. On-year growth remains steady, led by consumption and investments, as well as manufacturing and construction.
Exports shrunk by 3%, taking a toll on the overall growth figures, as shipments of transportation equipment, as well as coal and chemical products, fell amid sliding global oil prices. While these factors mean that the export boom seen in the first quarter of the year is likely to lose steam, most analysts believe that the economy will keep up its growth momentum for the rest of the year, fueled by a continued recovery in consumption.
Structural problems such as stunted growth in income as well as high levels of household debt put a damper on consumption in the Korean economy. The new administration's income-led growth initiatives, together with the $10 billion budget supplement for the job creation, are expected to help ramp up spending for the low-income households, which will likely to drive steady growth in the second half of the year.
Reflecting anticipation over these government initiatives, consumer outlook on the economy hit a 6.5-year high in July, and the budget supplement is expected to add up to 0.2 percentage points to this year's growth rate. The Finance Ministry this week upgraded its annual growth projection for the country by 0.4 percentage points, from 2.6% to 3%. To meet this target, the Bank of Korea says the GDP needs to grow by 0.8% for each of the 2 remaining quarters. Oh Soo-young, Business Daily.
It was a 3-month period to remember for Korea's biggest tech firm, Samsung Electronics. The company logged record earnings in the second quarter with eye-watering net profits close to $10 billion. One of Samsung's subdivisions in particular played a huge part in delivering their stunning performance. Elliot Kim has the details.
Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics achieved a triple crown in quarterly earnings by beating its previous all-time high in sales, operating profits, and net profit during the April to June period. The company says operating profits surpassed $12.6 billion during the second quarter this year, a near 73% increase compared to the same period last year. It broke its previous all-time high, posted in 2013's third quarter, by more than $9 billion. The company pointed to a sharp increase in the operating profits of its semiconductor sector, which recorded a new high of more than $7.2 billion in the second quarter, 3 times more than that recorded during the same period from a year earlier. Second quarter sales have also jumped by nearly 20% from the same period last year to record an all-time high of $54.8 billion for the second quarter, some $8 billion more than its provisional estimate unveiled earlier this month. The company's net profit sharply rose by nearly 44% from the previous quarter to record more than $9.9 billion during the 3 months leading to June. Analysts forecast earnings will continue to rise during the latter half of this year on the back of price increases for DRAMs and NAND flash drives. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
Along with Samsung Electronics, Korea's major companies are continuing to report either losses or record quarterly profits for the 3 months from April to June. Let's take a look at these figures and what we can expect in the remaining half of this year.
China's backlash over Seoul's decision to deploy a THAAD anti-missile battery seems to have affected second quarter performances by Korean firms. Top cosmetics maker Amore Pacific Group was hit hard in the second quarter by China's economic retaliation over THAAD, which led to a fall in Chinese tourists. It reported on Thursday its second quarter operating profit fell 57.8% on year, with sales also plummeting 16.5% from a year earlier. Hyundai Motor reported a net profit of $815 million in the April-June period, down 48% from a year ago, after its sales in China dropped 29% in the first half of this year. Meanwhile, low global oil prices dealt a heavy blow to the country's oil refining industry. S-Oil reported $104.9 million in operating profit for the 3 months to end June, an 82% plunge from a year ago due to softening crude prices and weak inventory valuation. Oil has remained below $50 a barrel so far this year, despite OPEC's efforts to support prices through a production quota. However, things are looking good for Korea's tech firms. Samsung said on Thursday that its second quarter net profit jumped 89% on year to set a new record, thanks to strong returns from its chip business. Chip maker SK hynix also posted record earnings in the second quarter, as its net profit shot up almost ninefold from a year ago, as strong demand for its PC and computer server memory chips drove up unit prices.
And to give us more insight on this, Professor Shin Se-dun from Sookmyung Women's University joins us in the studio today. Welcome, Professor.
Good afternoon.
All right, so looking at second quarter earnings, many companies appear to be suffering from the THAAD fallout, with their net profits plunging. Now, did the THAAD issue play a sizable role here?
Well, in part, THAAD friction may have caused kind of bad earning performances for most of the company. But in general, if you look at the statistics of export in the second quarter, except for a few items like semiconductors, generally export is losing the steam that has been showing very fast recovery from 2016. So if you look at the second quarter economic growth, you will see that export has been actually down over the year. So in general, it may be because of that, but in general, slowdown in the export may be the real underpinning of inferior corporate performances.
Now, the oil refining industry also struggled a lot amid low global oil prices. So what can we expect in the remaining half of this year for the oil refining industry?
In general, oil-related products will be losing very fast growth in the first quarter, in the sense that not just Korea, if you look at the statistics for other countries like Japan, or United States, the export in petroleum-related products are declining over the world. So I think the general slowdown in export of petroleum-related products will continue down the road until the end of 2017.
Now, Samsung Electronics and SK hynix, meanwhile, recorded huge net profits for the second quarter thanks to booming demand for its chip business. Now, do you think this upward trend will continue for these companies for the remaining half of this year?
More or less, because we are in the process of transforming from third revolution to fourth industrial revolution. That means we need a huge demand for chips and memories. So I think general high demand for semiconductors, mostly from Korea, will continue probably through the end of next year. So the extraordinary boom in the semiconductor industry will continue for a while, I think, 2017 and 2018.
But then there's still the ongoing diplomatic row between China and Korea over the THAAD deployment, as well as potential revisions to the Korea-US FTA expected. So with that in mind, what are some of the factors that could affect corporate earnings in the third and fourth quarters?
Well, most of the corporates in Korea have dual markets, one in the domestic, the other one in the export market. market. As I said, the export market seems to losing the steam that they enjoyed in the first quarter. So we can expect that export will be losing some kind of dynamism that they have in the first half of the year. So I will expect that in the second quarter or third and fourth, I think the export would not making very much profit for the corporations. And in the domestic market still, demand for domestic is very weak. So in general, slowdown in performance, earning performance for the corporate will continue throughout 2017, maybe until 2018.
Now, because Korea is largely export dependent, Korean companies are vulnerable to external uncertainty stemming from abroad. So is there anything that Korea can do to cushion some negative effects coming from overseas?
Well, we have, Korea-USA FTA consultation. And also, THAAD issue is not resolved yet. So for Korean new government, for Moon Jae-in, President Moon Jae-in, that's going to be the most important challenge that he has to deal with. And I think, very smooth resolution of FTA issue and THAAD issue will be the critical for the success of the Moon government, and that's going to be the most important challenge for the government as well as for the president, I think.
All right, thank you so much for your insight today.
You're welcome.
President Moon Jae-in is meeting with Korea's top business leaders starting today and will continue to do so on Friday while drinking a beer or two. The top office hopes the casual atmosphere will help break the ice and allow them to have a more candid and constructive discussion. Moon Jae-in reports.
A glass of ice-cold beer may just be the right way to break the ice on sizzling hot days like these. And that's exactly what South Korean President Moon Jae-in plans to do.
On Thursday and Friday this week, President Moon Jae-in will meet with the nation's business leaders for candid discussions. To foster a setting for productive and frank communication, President Moon plans to meet the business leaders over beer.
As an advocate of building a speak-up culture within his office and the cabinet, the new South Korean president wants to create a setting for open communication in his first meeting with the heads of the nation's most powerful companies. The fact that the meeting takes place over 2 days also sets this administration apart from its predecessors. This upon President Moon's request to spend more time with each leader.
The meeting will provide a venue for the new government and the nation's businesses to share their ideas on the Moon administration's basic economic policy direction of job creation and mutually beneficial cooperation between large companies and small and medium-sized enterprises.
Sorted and grouped in no order of significance, stressed the top office, 8 of Korea's biggest multinationals, including Hyundai Motor and LG, will visit the Blue House on the first day, and 7 others comprised Samsung and SK, among others, come face-to-face with the president on the second. The 14 conglomerates have always been regulars of such meetings, even under previous South Korean governments, but the invite of Otugi stands out. And according to multiple Blue House officials, the mid-sized food producer was asked to join due to its outstanding performance in cooperating with smaller firms and creating more jobs. These encounters between the president and business tycoons have, in previous administrations, served as venue for corporate government nexus, deep-rooted cronyism, and corruption in the country. This president is committed to putting an end to that and build a healthy relationship with the business circle. Whether it will end in success remains to be seen. Moon Jae-in, Business Daily.
With the government having outlined its economic policy goals and its multi-billion-dollar supplementary budget now passed, the next task at hand is revising the country's tax code. The government and the ruling party met today to discuss details, but the proposed tax hike on large companies and the super wealthy isn't sitting well with the opposition parties. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Easing the financial burden for average households while hiking taxes on the biggest earners to overcome low growth and polarization. That was the focus of discussions at a meeting Thursday between the government and the ruling Democratic Party of Korea.
Looking at the big picture, the revision has three key aspects. It's aimed at boosting job creation, strengthening the redistribution of wealth, and actively using fiscal policies.
The proposed revision to the tax code calls for tax breaks on companies that provide better quality jobs and tax relief for the self-employed. The ruling party is also suggesting that firms with a turnover of more than 200 billion won, or roughly $180 million a year, be subject to a corporate tax rate of 25%, up from the current 22%. For individuals that earn an annual income of more than $450,000, the income tax would be 42%, up from 40%. The ruling party hopes to secure extra tax revenue through the revision to finance the government's 5-year agenda. But opposition parties are strongly against the proposal. They say that although the government claims it will only apply to top-income earners, the increase could trigger a domino effect where the burden could extend to average citizens. They add a higher corporate tax rate would create a vicious cycle whereby companies reduce investment in R&D, which would in turn create fewer jobs.
We will carefully review and thoroughly discuss measures. We are suggesting the establishment of consultative group with opposition parties so we can have constructive talks on our differences and reach a fair conclusion.
The government plans to have the finalized version of the bill ready by next Wednesday. It will then be submitted to the National Assembly, and the government and the ruling party are hoping to put it up for a full floor vote in the next regular session of Parliament in September. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
And more on the Moon Jae-in administration's 5 main policy objectives. Our Kim Ji-yeon gives us the details on the government's economic policies dubbed people-centered growth.
Under the so-called income-led growth strategy, the government pledged to address income disparities by boosting growth through job creation. To do that, the government laid out a roadmap to increase the number of public servants by 810,000 by 2022. And it's not just about the numbers, but also the quality of jobs created, with the government saying they will try to reduce the average working hours and turn irregular workers into full-time employees. The government also plans to address the country's record-high youth unemployment by increasing the required proportion of young people public agencies have to hire from the current 3% to 5%. In the private sector, the government will provide the salary of 1 employee if a small and medium-sized company hired 3 employees aged between 15 to 29. Another aim is the promotion of a fairer economy and to reform the country's ownership structure, currently dominated by family-owned chaebols, by allowing owners of subsidiary companies to sue the holding company's board of directors if they have committed illegal acts. Second, boosting the voting rights of small shareholders so that they could cast their votes for a member of a board of directors as their delegate, someone they think could best represent them instead of being swayed by the chaebol family member. This on top of the government strengthening its monitoring of accounting fraud by increasing jail time for accounting offenses from the current 5 to 7 years to 10 years, while removing the $1.8 million cap on fines. To improve consumer rights, the government will also make it easier for consumers to pursue class action lawsuits starting next year. The government estimates that it needs a combined $37.8 billion for the next 5 years to implement its economy-related policies alone, something that cannot be afforded solely by the execution of a $9.8 billion supplementary budget. So it plans to cut unnecessary government spending and collect taxes under its new tax policy, due to be unveiled next Wednesday. It's speculated to include increases in corporate taxes and income taxes on the super rich. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
The U.S. Federal Reserve strongly hinted it could start reducing its massive bond holdings as early as September. Following its 2-day policy meeting, the Fed kept its benchmark rate steady at the current range between 1 and 1.25%, as widely expected. In a statement released on Wednesday local time, the central bank said it expects to begin unwinding its $4.5 trillion bond portfolio, quote, relatively soon. Fed watchers are interpreting the language to mean either September or October. The bank has conducted 2 interest rate hikes so far this year by 1/4 percentage point in March and also in June. Investors remain split on the chances of one more rate hike before the year is up, which may depend heavily on future inflation readings. Korea's second internet-only lender, Kakao Bank, officially began operations today with some 35,000 accounts opened within 3 hours of its launch. Kakao Bank says customers can open accounts by downloading an application on their smartphones and verifying their identities online. With aims to provide lower borrowing costs and higher interest rates, transaction fees charged on overseas wire transfers is only 1/10 compared to traditional commercial banks. Its money transfer service can be used through its mobile messenger, Kakao Talk. Kakao Bank is now the country's second online exclusive bank after the country's first internet-only lender, K-Bank, launched in April to resounding success. Financial authorities are hoping that internet-only banks will help revitalize the banking sector by attracting more investments from the IT businesses. With the number of young job seekers here in Korea continuing to rise, the amount of time it takes to land their first job is increasing as well. Our Lee Joo-young has more.
11.6 months. That's the average time it takes for young people to get their first job in Korea these days. What's more, for about 10% of fresh graduates, it takes an astonishing 3 years to secure their first job. This is as they choose to prepare for various job examinations instead of accepting employment after graduation. According to Statistics Korea, the number of young people preparing for occupational exams reached 710,000 as of May this year, the largest since relevant data started being compiled in 2006. Out of those, nearly 40% are studying for public service examinations, followed by those preparing to earn skill certificates and corporate exams.
Like a lot of people, I'm looking to be a civil servant, so I'm working especially hard to make myself stand out in the crowd.
Although preparing to be a public official isn't as popular as it was a year ago, it's still overwhelmingly popular compared to other professions.
It's a similar trend that the proportion of people preparing to be civil servants is still very high compared to other professions.
With the National Assembly having passed its $10 billion extra budget aimed at creating more public sector jobs, the growing number of young job seekers preparing for civil service exams is expected to persist for the time being. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.